Hey folks, welcome back to the Restoration Couple channel. Today's video, we're back on paneling, one of our favourite projects to do. Stick around and we'll show you how we did it. Right, in the past I've used 100mm stiles and rails for low-level shaker paneling, but we're doing the whole wall, so let's go for 70mm. I think it's a little bit more delicate. So what I'm going to do is cut these down. Thinking you haven't got the gear to do this, fear not, there's loads of ways to achieve the same thing, and I've done a whole bunch of videos in the past showing different methods, simply because back then I didn't have any of the tools I do now. First option is go to the store, pick up your MDF sheet, 6mm or whatever it is, take it to the cutting saw and get them to rip the strip for you. Now, they'll do a certain number of strips for free, then you have to pay, but it's still probably worth it. If you're doing lots of it, then get 2 or 3 sheets, they'll put them on the saw together and cut them at the same time. So I would suggest that the long cuts you would get cut in the store, the short cuts you can do yourself. The next option is to use a circular saw. Could be a corded one, could be a cordless one, could be a new one, could be an old one, doesn't really matter. A fine-tooth blade would be better in it. But even so, using a circular saw and a straight edge, you'll be able to do just the same cuts. I've done a previous video which shows you how you can create your own track saw using your normal circular saw and run it along that. And we will try and leave a link to that somewhere in this video. The only thing I would advise against is using a jigsaw or a handsaw, because you're simply not going to get a fine enough cut to make it nice and seamless on the wall, especially where things are butting up to each other and you want things even, accurate and square. What we're using is a track saw. Works in a similar way to how you would use a straight edge on a circular saw. It's just a little bit more controlled, and these you can get pretty inexpensively now, and they all do the same job as well. The benefit of a track saw is the dust extraction is so much better. Most of it's sucked away. Still going to wear a respirator, so we know it's 70mm. I'm going to mark up, I'm going to cut all of this board down to 70mm strips. That'll be plenty for all the verticals, and also then we'll be able to cut these down for the horizontal. It might not look like it, but I have got my PPE on. I'm trying out the little earbuds from Isotunes. I'm going to put all the links down in the description, but as always, a huge thank you to them for being supporters of the channel. But of course, you guys benefit too. I'll put the discount code and the link down in the description. But back on with the project. There are other ways to do repeat cuts. The table saw might help as well, but if you've got a table saw like me and the blade hasn't been changed in a few years, it's probably not going to leave as good a finish as this. And do yourself a favour, if you've got a track saw, get yourself a 3m rail. These ones don't join very well, and the other one I've cut down for other purposes, so I'm having to relocate. The riving knife on this drops into it so you can keep nice and straight, but it's a bit of a pain, so I'm actually going to order one now because I've got a bunch more stuff to do in here. And I know if I don't order it now, I'll forget for next time. Okay, now comes the fun bit. It's all the working out, the maths. We'll use the teacher for this one. So we're
making it easy. It's divided by 4.
You want to go with 4?
Yeah, 4 panels, like, you know.
And it's
squares.
square because we're a 2.4m ceiling here as well. So
yeah, which means we'll also probably use less MDF too.
One piece less on both. So if you want 4 squares or rectangles, whatever you're going to use, you need to add on 1, because for every run you're always going to have the extra on the end. So we're going to need 5 verticals. Let me show you how we're going to start on the door. Right, because we're impatient and we're paneling the wall before we've got our door linings and architraves in, we need to kind of think one step ahead. So hopefully you won't need to do this, but usually if you're doing it in an existing room, then you're going to be butting your first piece up to the architrave. Now in our instance, because we haven't fitted that yet and we're going with a fairly slim profile, we're actually going to run our first piece underneath, and we'll do that all the way around the door, and then our door lining will come out to there and the architrave will sit on top of this. So what I've done is I've cut most of them at this width, which is 70 millimeters, but this first one is going to be a little bit deeper, and that means that it will allow for our architrave and then still show 70. Same thing with the skirting boards later on. So we know that we're going to be using 5 uprights, 5 stiles to get to our width, because we want 4 squares. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's what you decided. So our wall is 2396, and we need to take away 5 times 70. So minus 350. So if you were to stack all of our uprights together, they would equal 350 mil. Yeah? So what does that give us?
2046.
2046, and we
Divide that by
want 4 squares.
Yeah. 511.5.
511 points. So if we go 511, we know our squares are going to be 511 square, and then one of these in between. Now the very last thing we need to do before we start banging them on the wall is to work out our switches and make sure they fall within a square. We finally made a start. I've actually had to adjust our measurement slightly because I messed up with the architrave measurement. We are still undecided on the shape of our panels, simply because the switch is going to foul on one of the rails, so I think we're going to end up with rectangular rather than square frames. Right, that's all the uprights done apart from our extra wide one on the side there, which we're going to cut down now. So I would say that the best thing you could do, especially if you're using a laser level, is don't start in the corner if your walls are slightly off, that would throw them all. It's better if you can pick the second one in, or the first one in, get that in really plumb, really accurate, and then you could use the spacer like we were doing to set the other ones out, just checking with the level as you go. The other option is if you've really decided on exact shapes and things like that, you could cut all of these rails ready and probably install the whole thing as you go. That means you can butt the joins up really tight and then get some adhesive and pin them in place. Adhesive, we're just using multi-sticks like a normal polymer adhesive, and it squishes on quite tight. It's fairly fast setting and works fine. I've used this for lots of projects in the past. And then to pin them in place, which you don't necessarily need to do, but what it does do is pulls them really tight. That means that when you come to paint, there's no little gap, and less caulking and stuff like that. So we're using the little 18 gauge nailer, but with these tiny little pins. Do you know what they were? 12?
Tiny ones.
12 mil, 15 mil pins. So it's basically just, it's only going in as far as the plasterboard, but it's enough to just hold it in whilst the adhesive goes off. That's all hidden by the architrave, so let's put a couple more. Okay, we're looking like we're getting somewhere now. Now, due to the fact that our switch was fouling on our rail, we've decided to go slightly off square and make them a little bit landscape. Hopefully in some sort of interior design fashion way, it's going to make the room feel wider. But that's what we've gone for. So the bottom one is the one that may end up being slightly different, but it's behind the bed. So down here, these were 470, these spacing. So if we go for 470 here, we'd end up with a rail coming in. Our skirting board is coming up about 100mm. So what that means is our bottom rail, these sections that are going to go in, I'm going to cut wider. They're going to be about this tall. But actually, if you think about a door or some panelling, you often have a slightly deeper bottom rail anyway. So I don't think it'll look odd. And our skirting, once that's planted onto that, should all tie in fine. Right, what can make a break using MDF on panelling is not doing the next few stages right. So we're going to seal it, then we're going to give it a bit of a sand, then we're going to go on with an undercoat, and then we're going to fill all our holes, and then all of these joins should disappear, and you'll get a much finer, smoother finish on the inside corners.
Oh, it's quite runny actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh, what have you done?
Well, it's like a really thin varnish, basically, but just means that when
like
you start
milk.
sanding the edges, it gets rid of all the fuzziness. It's what happens sometimes when you put the water-based paints on here, it starts getting all fuzzy and puffs up a bit. Jay's popped down to do the school run, so I carried on and finished the painting. So what we've done is put a water-based acrylic undercoat primer on, the normal NAILGUN one that I use for just about everything. That may fluff it up a little bit, but because we've got the sealer on there, it should stay smooth. What we'll do now is once this is dry, hopefully fairly soon, we'll come in with just a really simple filler, fill all of our pinholes, give it a rub back, and then we'll be ready for our top coat. As you will have probably seen in that time lapse, it takes a little bit of time and it's a bit of a faff. That's the one negative of shaker doors, shaker panelling. It's just a bit of a pain to paint. So using a brush to get into the corners, ideally an angled like sash brush is good to get in there. And then just a foam roller. So everything is painted now. If I had my way, I would spray this, but there's just too much going on in here at the moment. And also I've lent out one of the sprayers to my brother. So we're gonna just do it by hand. It's quite a simple wall. It's just with the sprayer, you can spray on an angle and get into all the nooks and crannies really evenly. The problem you have with when you're using a brush, I really like a brushed finish on the actual panelling. So on the last coat I'll do that intentionally, but the problem is if you're trying to brush into the corner here and then you're rolling this, then in the light, especially if you're using a paint with a sheen on it, you can see where you're getting into the corners. If you leave a little streak from the brush or the roller, the texture's a bit different. I mean, that's being fussy, but I can see bits now. And then the other decision you've got to make is whether you caulk or not. You'll see a lot of people who fit panelling like this, they'll come in now with a caulk gun and just bead it everywhere, and then you've got to wipe it all off again. Personally, I think if you fit them nice and tight with an adhesive, you pin them so they're kind of clamped and set, you should be okay, because we're going in with the sealer, then an undercoat, and then 2 top coats, especially if you're using like a latexy paint and acrylic top coat. That's got a bit of flex in it anyway. A lot of times when you see the paint splitting between materials, it's when they're different, especially if this was wood, like strip wood or painted pine or something. I would expect that to expand and contract like a tongue and groove ceiling, and that's when you would definitely see a split there. It's a bit like sometimes when you're putting MDF architrave on a softwood door lining, it can happen there as well. Whereas in this case, we've got plasterboard, which is a pretty stable thing, and MDF, so I shouldn't imagine there's going to be much movement, and therefore we're going to go ahead and just get on with it. Want me to cut in?
Yeah.
You blame me then.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a lovely brush.
Oh, sugar!
I thought you were going to do that. You're holding it right on the wall just now.
Tim!
I gave you one job. Oh my god, I can't take it. I can't. I'll get the kids to finish it after school. I cannot. I can't deal with this. Oh. Oh.
Okay.
Jeez.
I can't use it. It's gone.
Oh God, there's worse. It's got me sounding anyway.
Oh, it was dark green on white.
It's so much nicer with a brush finish. Hey folks, it is.
Done!
It's done.
We really love it.
We do.
It's really
nice.
dramatic, isn't it?
Always love a bit of panelling. I enjoy the process. It's quite a fun little project to do, and there's loads of different ways you can do it.
And it is a job in a day, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
it's quite a dramatic, quick transformation. Yeah, it's really worth sanding down all these little bits. When you come to painting them, they really show up. So,
Especially with MDF, it just gets a bit like fuzzy and rough. So spend the time doing that. The sealer, then the undercoat, plenty more sanding, filling.
And
It's all worth it.
I'll also say that I used a roller for the corners, like punching it in on the first one, just to get a really fine coat. But then it would gather here, so I'd have to go along with the brush
Yeah.
and like just keep touching it up and keep looking back as
And
drips gather.
well worth using a sash brush so it's slightly angled so you can get into the corners. But what have we learned and what we knew all along that we should have done?
Spray. Yeah. 100%.
You know, this Fluffy Buffy's having a baby.
Why?
Did you see it?
No, but she says it's lying down and it looks really fat.
Yeah, she's yeah, okay. We'll come and have a look at it. You see a water bag, feet, a nose, or a baby?
And
Well, not a baby.
And we saw a bit of the head.
No, get out of here. So a couple of things we definitely should have done, which we knew all along and you said to do, which was spray it.
I think the lesson learned is listen to Joe more.
We sprayed everything in the whole building really, and the finish on this would have been absolutely spot on.
Is it worth doing it, a third coat?
No, because I think because it's a water-based paint, there's a bit of like brush strokes show through a bit, and so does the rolling's even worse because you get that pimply orange peel look. We would now have to do some severe sanding to then spray. I don't know, could be possible, but definitely if you can, get yourself a cheap H3LP sprayer and spray it. It'll be well worth it, especially if you're using a water-based acrylic paint because it just doesn't lay flat. But we're gonna, for our third coat, after sanding this, we're gonna try, what was it called? Flow-Troll. It's basically an additive you put in water-based paint. And we're going to try that out. Hope you enjoyed this project. We've got a few more panelling jobs to do around here, including the big cedar wall the other end, which we have now started.
Oh, it's going to look amazing.
Looking good.
Really exciting.
Lots of planing and lots of fiddling, but it's going to look smart. One last thing to leave you with is a playlist. We've done so many panelling projects in the past at the old house, everywhere, that we're going to create a playlist with all those panelling projects. There's probably half a dozen. Some shaker style, some tongue and groove, MDF, solid wood, all sorts.
With beading, without beading.
Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Any more info we'll put down in the description. Any questions, put them in the comments. But that's it. Thanks for watching.
Remember, if you can, do it yourself. And we'll see you next time.